The French Chef is made possible by a grant from Safeway stores.
This is not a sauced drum, nor is it a molded dessert. It is a timbale aux épinards. It's a spinach mold. We're doing timbales today on the French Chef. Welcome to the French Chef. I'm Julia Child. You know, so often one wonders what would be a really chic and nice little thing to serve as a first course. Or you want to have a nice, unusual kind of a luncheon dish, or you want to do something out of the ordinary with vegetables. Well, a great answer is the timbale. It's a custard, and most of us think of custards as caramel custard, but these are made with vegetables or meat or fish, and it's a very French kind of a little first course, or what they would call an entrée. And there are two types of them. One is the regular timbale made with custard, which this one is, and then there's another one which is made with a white sauce and separated eggs. And we're going to do the first one first, which is the regular whole egg one that you can use either for vegetables or chicken livers or meat or fish. And for vegetables you can use asparagus or broccoli or spinach, and we're going to use spinach because I'm going to pretend that you have some unexpected people coming in for a meal and you want to impress them, and you just have frozen spinach in the refrigerator. And I found a new system for frozen spinach which I like very much, which is to take the whole package, the block of spinach, and put it in a large bowl of cold water until it has defrosted like this, and then to drain it. And what we want to have in our spinach is cooked chopped spinach. And so after it's drained, because we want the spinach to be very dry, you take it by handfuls and just cruelly squeeze all the water possible out of it, because we want to give added flavor to the spinach. And I think if you try this system, you'll find that it tastes about as much like fresh spinach as any frozen spinach you've ever had, because it remains fresh, and it remains nice and green and has a lovely taste like fresh spinach, and I think that's quite an achievement. I've got about a little over a package there, and then I'm going to chop it and cook it, and I'm going to cook it in some butter with shallots. And I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoons of butter, and then put some chopped shallots or scallions in, about, I'm putting in about 2 tablespoons of chopped shallots also. And then while that's cooking, I've got it cooking a little bit too hard, I'm going to put it on a lower burner, then I'm going to chop the spinach. Now, one thing about spinach is if you haven't liked it because it has sort of an acid taste, it may be that you cooked it in a kind of a metal that gives it an acid taste. So be sure if you're going to cook it, use an enameled saucepan or a stainless steel one, or one of those fireproof glass ones. And when you chop the spinach, too, chop it with a stainless steel knife. You can use either chopped or leaf spinach, but even if you buy chopped spinach, you always have to chop it up some more because they don't chop it very fine. And if you let the spinach just defrost by itself, you see there's an awful lot of water that you would either have to boil out or get rid of in some other way. And chopping it up like this is perfectly simple. Be sure that you have a knife with a straight edge like that. And then when you have it chopped up very fine, and you've cooked your shallots or scallions for just a minute or two, you just put your spinach right in. And then stir it around. And then you want to season it. Don't need this board anymore. And it should have a little bit of salt in it. Whenever you're cooking various things that each is going to be added to the other, it's a good idea to season each as you go along. Otherwise, you have such an enormous amount of salt and pepper to put in that it's just very hard to tell what it tastes like. I'm using a little tiny bit of nutmeg in here, which always goes well with spinach. You don't want to put much in, just a little tiny bit. And then I'm going to put in a little bit of freshly ground pepper. And then that gets stirred around and cooked over moderately low heat for about 4 or 5 minutes until it's tender. Although it's going to cook in its mold when it gets into the oven, if you don't cook it until it's pretty nearly tender at first, it doesn't actually cook very much more when you get it into your mold. And then as soon as that's gotten started, then it goes on to low heat and should cook covered, like that. Now this pan is a stainless steel inside and aluminum on the outside. You could use that heavy enameled iron. And then while the spinach is cooking, you get ready your custard. And this is going to have, I'm going to give you the ingredients as I go along. This is going to have 5 whole eggs. And I'm using U.S. graded large eggs. As you can see, this is very, very quickly assembled, which is what's so nice about it. And then we're going to have 2/3 cup of stale breadcrumbs. And when you're using your bread, be sure that you get a sort of a type of breadcrumbs that has body, that has sort of a homemade consistency. And that gets mixed up, and then we begin adding the rest of our ingredients. And this will have also about a 1/2 cup of grated Swiss cheese. I'm using the Swiss because it has a mild flavor. You could use cheddar, but cheddar is has a rather strong flavor, and the spinach is delicate. And then we want to have 1 cup of hot milk. I've got a measure here, and I have some hot milk. And then the hot milk, you beat in very slowly. If you're going to do this ahead of time, which you can perfectly well do, you could beat in cold milk, but I'm beating in hot milk just because it gets it started, so it'll cook a little faster. And this is always when you're adding anything to eggs, you add the milk very slowly. And then this will probably need a little more salt in it, so I'll put in about 1/2 teaspoonful. And I think I'll put in a little more pepper too. And then, after that's all ready and mixed up, this of course you can do ahead. You can do your spinach ahead. And when your spinach is done and you've tasted it and it's tender, you then add the spinach. And again, if the spinach is hot, you should put it in rather slowly so that you're not going to scramble your eggs. And with the shallots in the spinach, it has a very nice sort of appetizing smell to it. Well, there's our spinach in. And then you want to be sure and taste it so that you know that it has just exactly the right amount of salt and pepper. It's really so good that you could eat it right away. And then when that's all done, this you can do ahead and leave in the refrigerator. You then are ready to fill your mold. And you can use any kind of a mold that you would like. You can use a regular souffle mold or a ring mold. And this is the French Charlotte mold, and when it's turned upside down, it looks like a drum. And that comes from tambour, or drum. So that's why these little custards are called a tambal. You can use it also in individual molds like this, either little souffle molds or the little fireproof glass ones. And then it's going to cook in the oven, and when then you're going to unmold it. And I have found that although most of these recipes don't say that you have to line the mold with paper, you're much safer if you line the mold with wax paper. So I've got a wax paper here, and I'm cutting around the bottom of the mold with a knife so that I can make the ring, and then just with scissors cut the ring out. And I've found that very often I have not lined the mold, and then the bottom of the custard doesn't unmold properly, and that's too bad. And then you put the wax paper in the mold. This mold has been buttered all around fairly heavily, and then I'm going to butter the mold. Just soften butter with my fingers and put it over the wax paper. Now, wax paper doesn't have any flavor, or I don't think there's even any wax on it. It's just called wax paper, so that you don't need to worry about the paper having any taste when you cook with it. And then, I guess I better take a spoon to this. You fill the mold. Now, this is about a 3½ cup mold, and I think it's just going to fill this. And if you have any left over, then you can cook it in individual molds. As a matter of fact, I think that's a little bit full, so I'm going to take a little bit of it out. It should be filled to within about 1/4 of an inch of the top. And if you were using the individual molds, you'd you'd do it exactly that way, fill it 1/4 of an inch within the top. Because this doesn't swell with whole eggs, it comes up just about to the top, and then when it's done, it begins to sink down just a little bit. So you have to leave a little space for swelling, but you're not going to have much trouble with swelling. And if you were using asparagus or broccoli, you would cook it exactly the same way, and with either asparagus or broccoli, you'd chop it up, and then you warm it in a little bit of butter with some shallots or chopped onions. And that will give it the flavor that it needs, and then use exactly the same proportions. And then when your mold is filled, this again you can do ahead of time and refrigerate. And then when you're ready to cook, you put it into a pan of water in a 350-degree oven, and put it down in the lower part of the oven. And it's very easy to have your pan already heating in the oven, and the water should come about to 1/3 to 1/2 the way up. And this will take about 30 minutes, and you'll see when I take some that I have done out, you can see when it's done. And now our second type of tambal has separated eggs, and it has a white sauce rather than plain milk. So I'm going to make the white sauce now. Now here's another type of pan. I think this is really my favorite of all. This is a heavy cast iron with baked aluminum on it. And I think there's some American manufacturers who make them, but at least you can buy them in most big American department stores or hardware stores. And what's nice about them is that they're heavy, they hold the heat, and also they're non-staining. You don't have to worry about leaving anything that you cook in the pan. And this white sauce is a bechamel, which is the usual classical French sauce, which is, I think, is the most used sauce of any. I only need 1 cup of sauce, but I want to have enough so that I can have a sauce to put on top when it's done. And again, I'm going to put in some scallions because we want to have a nice taste to this sauce. I think I have the heat on a little high. And these just get cooked for a moment, and then I'm going to have about 1/3 of a cup of flour. And it's the flour that's the important measurement in your sauce making. I'm going to have to add a little bit more butter because you want to have enough butter so that you can stir this around, because the flour and the butter are going to cook for about 2 minutes. And then you have a sauce that tastes well. We have the other kind of a sauce, a mock hollandaise, in which the butter and flour are just melted together, and then the liquid goes in, but it doesn't have nearly as good a flavor as the regular French white sauce, in which the flour is cooked. And I think if you try one of these pans, you'll like it very much. I think I said baked aluminum, but it isn't. It's baked enamel. That's what it is. It's an enamel outside. Now, after this has cooked for about 2 minutes, you then put in your hot milk. And you put it in gradually and beat it in with a wire whip. I mean, you put a big dollop of it in and then vigorously beat it in. And I want a thick sauce at first, and then I'm going to thin it out. So the trick, I think, in any of these sauces is you don't have to be so careful about your proportions, but start out gradually with your liquid, because you can always thin it out, but it's not so easy to thicken it up. And then beat it thoroughly with your wire whip. This looks lumpy because we have the scallions in. It doesn't, and that sometimes can give you a fright if you've forgotten what it was you had in that would give these little lumps, but it gives a very nice flavor. Now we'll put it off so that it will cook slowly. And then this next tambal we're going to make out of ham, and it also has noodles in it. And the noodles give it sort of take the place of breadcrumbs. And I have some noodles which are already cooked, you know, those plain egg noodles. And it's about 1.25 cups of noodles, and I'm going to put them through a food mill because they have to be ground. So 1.25 cups raw will make about 1.5 cups of cooked ground noodles. Now these, if you were going to use ham or some kind of meat that had to go through a meat grinder, you could just grind the noodles and the ham or the whatever other meats you were going to use all together. And there's another thing, this kind of a tambal is awfully good for leftovers. You could even use it if you had absolutely delicious spaghetti and you had about, say, 2 cups of it left. You could put the whole business through a meat chopper or food mill and then have a lovely sauce along with it. You can do about anything you want with this. And now we have our 1.5 cups of ground noodles. Then I'm going to use about 2/3 cup of ground cooked ham. And of course, the better your ham, the better your tambal. And then I'm going to put in a mixture of parsley and chives. I'm going to put quite a bit in there, about 3 tablespoons full. And I think I'll also put in a little more cheese. You see, with both of these custards, you can do just about what you want. Now, what else am I going to put in? I've got a little bit of cooked onion. I'll put in some chopped onion that's been cooked in butter. And then if you have anything like some cooked mushrooms, you can put them in. Those are cooked diced mushrooms, and that's about 2/3 cup. This is about 1.5 cups of mixture in all. And then I want about a cup of thick white sauce. And if you have any nice gravy or stock, you can mix that all in too. And then we're going to have 3 egg yolks and 3 egg whites. So I'm going to beat the egg whites now in a machine. So here are 3 egg whites. And they're going to be beaten in the machine, and I'm going to add in a little bit of cream of tartar for those 3, a scant 1/4 teaspoon. And because this is a heavy mixture, having the egg white sort of puffs it up and lightens it a little bit. Then I've got 3 egg yolks. There they are. And this is going to fill about a 4 to 5 cup mold. You sort of never know exactly how much is going to go in until you get your mixture all done. Because it's going to cook up nicely, really, no matter what you do. Now, let's see how far egg whites have beaten up yet. Not quite. This is an awfully good mold used with leftover cooked fish, but you just have to be sure that when you get all your mixture together that it has a really good, delicious flavor. And I think there's nothing like onions to flavor things up. See, that's ready now. It's forming a little peak. You don't want to have your egg whites too dry. And then the egg whites just get folded in. And the reason that for this kind of a tambal, which is a much heavier mixture than the other one, the egg whites just give it a little more lightness. And then you use that same old folding technique of a rubber spatula coming down and around like that. You see, it goes down to the edge of the bowl, and then by turning your spatula, some of your heavy mixture comes up over your lighter mixture. And just the thing is with this kind of a one, just be sure and taste it and make sure that it's exactly has a lovely flavor. You might want a little tomato paste in. And if you had any leftover cooked vegetables like peas or broccoli or cauliflower, they would go in perfectly well. And you may very well find that with some of your own mixtures that you've made up, that they're extremely nice. And then just keep notes of what you have done, and then the next time you make one of these, you can sort of remember the kind of ingredients you put in. And also, you can make a little bit more of, say, your last night's dinner, so that you can think, well, now, Sunday noon, it might be very nice to have one of these tambals. And so now, when you have your mixture all ready, it's ready to go into the mold. And this one I'm going to put into a ring mold. You can put the other custard into a ring mold, too, if you'd like. The ring mold, I find, is often a little bit tricky to unmold. So again, I've done quite a few of these, and I think the ring mold, I find with almost anything I do, I always line it with paper. So again, this mold has been fairly heavily buttered, and then I've cut a piece of donut-sized paper, and I'm going to put that in and then butter it again. Because it's just terrible if you make one of these things and then the bottom sticks onto the mold. And then the paper peels off very easily at the end. And then in goes the mixture. And then again, if you find you have a little bit too much for the mold, this one, even with the egg whites, it's going to swell just a little bit, and then it sinks down again so that you can fill this just about to the top of the ring mold. And spread it out. Now I have more mixture left. And that, again, you could put into an extra small mold. So this one you could get your mixture ready, but you couldn't fold in your egg whites until just when you were going to cook it. Then this again will go into a 350-degree oven in a pan of water. And when it's a ring mold, it takes a little less time to cook. Now I've got some that are all ready so that you can see how they look. Now this is the same ham mold. And the nice thing about these is that you can get them done ahead of time. And this has been in the warming oven for half an hour. And the ham one rises up a little bit more, and then it sinks down as it cools. Now, so I'll unmold the ham one. Now you see that has begun just to shrink a little bit from the side of the mold. And so take a rubber spatula and just push it all around a little bit so that you're going to be sure that it unmolds. And then push around the inside. You can tell when any of these are done by taking a knife and putting the knife in like this, and if it comes out perfectly clean, which this has, then it's done. And we'll see with the spinach mold too, it does the same thing. See, the knife comes out clean. If it doesn't come out clean, you would just leave it in the oven for a few minutes more. And then turn your hot dish upside down over it, and then turn it upside down, and then we hope it's going to unmold. It has. Good. Now, if it has, and then here's our paper, and that just gets peeled off. Then, what's a very nice thing to do is to fill with some peas or vegetables, or broccoli would be very nice, just before you're ready to serve. And then we have a little bit, we have our little bit of extra sauce left, so that just gets thinned out with some more milk, and we might put a little bit of heavy cream in, just depending on how many calories you want. I'll put in a little bit of cream, and then the sauce goes over it. And then with this sauce, of course, you'd be very careful to taste it very carefully, and then you could put in some herbs, and then you'll be ready to go in. I've got some more sauce in the dining room. I thought I'd sauce this in the dining room. Now, I didn't unmold the spinach tambal because it's a much easier thing to unmold than the ring one. And the spinach you could serve with a sauce as a first course. And it's perfectly delicious, unsauced, to use as a vegetable. We had it the other night with some broiled chicken, and it was just heavenly. And here's our ham tambal, which would be a main course. And you'd put a little sauce on it. I think it probably looks a little better with the sauce for serving, but then that's up to you. It just depends on how you feel it looks. You could perfectly well put some mushrooms in the sauce if you wanted to. And I think broccoli is a very nice centerpiece because it's so bright and green, but the lovely fresh green peas are good too. So you can see the tambal is a fine example of how smart you can be with very little, or how chic you can be with leftovers. So that's all for today on The French Chef. This is Julia Child. Bon appetit.
Julia Child is co-author of the book Mastering the Art of French Cooking.